in our state, as well as have that freedom that every summer we can leave for 3 or 4 months if we want. We've got a lot of, around my classes and around the program that I'm teaching, we can just travel anywhere we want.
Hi, I'm Kim Tolson and I'm the traveling therapist. It's my passion to teach therapists how to navigate online private practices and multiple income streams so they can travel the world. I'm a digital nomad with a virtual insurance-based private therapy practice and a multi-six-figure coaching business. I'm obsessed with entrepreneurship and developing tools that can help therapists live an adventurous lifestyle. In this podcast, I will discuss my journey as a digital nomad. I'll chat with other traveling therapists and help you navigate the complexities of running an online insurance-based practice. I'm so glad to have you with me on this journey. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Traveling Therapist Podcast. Super excited today to have Paul Collette. I hope I'm saying your last name correctly. Paul Collette with us. He's got quite a story, really interesting, super inspirational about how he's making it all work. So I'm really glad to have you here today, Paul. Can you tell the audience, how'd you go from just being like a traditional therapist to a traveling therapist?
Yeah, great. First off, wonderful to be on your podcast, Kim. I've been following you for a couple of years now. During COVID, after COVID, you've provided a lot of service to me and helped me navigate that really difficult landscape. And even today, I get excited whenever one of your podcasts drops. So I just love listening to all the other therapists and the influencers that you have on there talking about their journey as well. It helps me and keeps me energized and focused, because as we all are operating in a vacuum, sometimes in a very isolated little bubble, and having that connective tissue with our colleagues can be somewhat difficult.
Yeah.
You provide that. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I feel a little like blushing a little bit because it's just, you never know how it affects people, but I love to hear that it's helped you and supported you on your journey to becoming a traveling therapist and everything you're doing. It's really cool to see like the ripple effect. Yeah.
To answer your question, I first started, let's go back just a little bit. My previous life, I was a federal probation officer. I started my career in New York City. 1997. Before that, I was a New York City probation officer. Before that, I was a clinical case manager, which sounds pretty cool, but it's just basically, I was just a caseworker working in a hospital called Bellevue Hospital in New York City.
Okay.
Have you ever watched the show? Yeah. If you ever watched the show New Amsterdam, that's where it's actually filmed. So I worked in the psychiatric emergency room doing that in the very early 90s, and realizing very quickly that I didn't have the temperament nor the patience to be a therapist because I was in my early 20s. Didn't really know what the field was like. But at the same time, I was exposed to that population, drug addicted, mentally ill, homeless, working with them, providing service to them, learning a lot about the field, sitting at the feet of psychiatrists, psychologists, clinical social workers, the whole treatment team, and learning from them. But that wasn't my journey yet. So what I did was I transitioned into law enforcement. So I became a probation officer, which is a blend, if you will, of social work and law enforcement. You wear
I bet.
So it was a good fit for me, and actually helped me out considerably in terms of honing my skills in dealing with difficult populations. So I became a federal probation officer, and I did that job for almost 25 years. And during the mid part of my career, I supervised federal sex offenders. It's a pretty difficult population to work with. Ooh. Not only was I supervising it, I was also having to investigate violations that would occur, finding, unfortunately, and this is going to be a little vulnerable here, a little graphic child pornography and victims.
Oh, I'm sure.
Out in the fields. Having done that for almost 8 years, I was getting burned out and realized towards the end that, number one, it's not sustainable for me. I can't continue to do that. Number two, what am I going to do when I retire? Because the shelf life in law enforcement is about 20 years before you really start to develop trauma, post-traumatic stress, all the other wonderful co-occurring disorders that go along with working in that field. And sat back, audited myself, and said, why did I get in this field to begin with? And that was actually to help people. And becoming that caseworker back in the early 90s was something that I enjoyed. Now I'm ready. Now I think I've learned a lot. I've gotten the resilience. I have a family. I'm married to my second wife, who's incredibly supportive. She's a behavior interventionist. We've got two beautiful daughters, age 5 and 3. She's younger than me. I'm 56. And I realized that, number one, I have a lifestyle.
Yeah.
I love making money. I love traveling. I love working. And that's just who I am, much like you are and a lot of your guests here. And it's just something that I felt was a good fit for me. But I didn't know at the time when I was in graduate school that this was possible, that you could actually pack up a laptop, hit the road, hop on a plane, a boat, and continue to work remotely. Yeah, I've seen influencers on Instagram, and we all have about them in Thailand or someplace, and living out of a hotel and
laptop on the beach,
laptop on the beach, sipping Mai Tais out of a coconut. Isn't that wonderful? That's a great life, and I wanted that life. But as a probation officer, let's be honest, those are soft skills. They really don't translate well into the private sector. And much like many of the people that I worked with in that field, when they retired, they were having to live on half their income, even less, and having to figure out what they're going to do, their 2.0 version. And many ended up having to go work again full time, finding other jobs, having to budget their money to the point where they're not able to go out to eat and enjoy certain things that they were doing when they were working full time. So I looked at that kind of lifestyle and said, what's the best way for me to hack my way through that? And it was going back to graduate school and investing in that. So I sat my wife down and I explained to her, I said, listen, are you into this? This is something we're going to give up our happy hours. We're going to give up our weekends. This is going to be a couple years here for me to go back to school, but it's going to pay off in the long run. She was incredibly supportive. She said, because I told her, I said, look, when you met me, I was a probation officer. That was what I was doing. Now I'm asking you to be with me through this other version of myself. She was in. And once I had that level of support from her, it was so easy. Graduate school, plus I was older. Graduate school was much easier for me. So here in Connecticut, this is where we live. We call a licensed alcohol and drug counselor. That's an LADC. LADCs are very niche, where we only work with people with substance abuse, co-occurring disorder. Okay.
Gotcha.
So much like going to medical school and specializing, or you want to work on your feet, you become a podiatrist or a dentist, you go to dental school. In Connecticut, we've got 4 different master's level clinicians. We've got LMFTs. Okay. We've got social workers, MSWs, LCSWs. We've got PsyDs too. I'm sorry, we got PsyDs and PhDs as well. And we have LPCs, licensed professional counselors, and we also have LADCs. So it's a very niche master's level program. And that's what I wanted to do, because number one, that's the only population pretty much other than sex offenders that I worked with. Pretty much everybody on probation has some type of substance use disorder. I already knew about that. I already knew about working with that population. I felt more comfortable with that as well. And I didn't want to do anything else. I didn't want to invest the time and the resources getting an MSW or an LPC. I said, let me get my LADC. Let me get a master's degree in addiction counseling. That's and only specialized in that. Much like you and many of your guests, how they niche down, and that's actually where the money is. For me, the money is niching down.
The riches are in the niches, they say.
I love it. So once I did that, everything became easy for me. I no longer, even though I was working full time and having to juggle that. And by the way, nobody at my job even knew I was in graduate school until the very end.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
I kept that a secret. I worked with some toxic managers.
I bet. Oh my God.
They were just horrible people. But I was like, I knew if I shared that story with them, I would not have ended well. They would have come for me somehow, some way. They would have written me up. And I was just like, I don't know if you worked in toxic work environments. Law enforcement is
is a
world unto its own.
I'm actually a CSAC, so I was in and out of rehabs and outpatient, inpatient, non-medical detoxes. Yeah, definitely some toxic environments throughout my life before I went into private practice and all that, for sure.
Exactly. And which, by the way, that was something else, right? Because as I was in graduate school, I didn't know. I knew I wanted to have a private practice, but I was just assuming that what I was going to have to do was go work at an agency, work at some nonprofit, make X amount of money a year. Yeah. Because in my graduate program, I was actually told by one of my professors when they asked me what I want to do in front of the class, they were like, I said, I want to open up a private practice. And he goes, oh no, You can't do that. You're not going to make a lot of money in this field.
Oh my God, it's disgusting. I swear, this is like a soapbox. It's like, how is this possible, even in this day and age, that professors are still talking like that? It just blows my mind. It's like, you can actually do whatever the fuck you want to do.
You know why? Because I think that's all they know. That's all they know. And I'm not knocking people that do that. There's certainly room for people to work with disenfranchised populations to make $40,000 or $50,000 a year with a master's degree. Okay, you're certainly welcome to do that. But for me, I have a lifestyle. I have a family to take care of. I've made X amount of money every year, and I want to make six figures a year. I made six figures when I was working for the federal government, but I want to make more than what I was making for the federal government. And
absolutely,
how was I going to do that? And I realized that I'm talking to the wrong audience here. And I don't need to be talking to these professors because they don't, it's like talking to a jellyfish. It's like a different language to them. And that whole shame stigma comes in where I'm supposed to feel shame because I want to make $150 an hour or make $190,000 a year in this. Why should I feel ashamed of that? School's expensive. I have to grind away for those thousands of hours to do what I have to do. And this is fun. This is something else. We don't shame attorneys, right? You could graduate from the worst law school in the country, right? The toilet bowl law school out of a strip mall. And the day you pass the bar, you can charge $400 an hour. And nobody questions that from an attorney because they're expected to charge that amount of money. Much like a doctor, right? You don't negotiate with your surgeon when you're about to go into heart surgery. You're expected that this is going to cost $100,000 to save your life because they spent all that time and energy and money going to school for that, and they deserve that. Why are we in this profession publicly shamed or shamed by our colleagues because we want to have a great lifestyle and make a good living? I don't get it sometimes. And I get that from some clients as well. So I have a private practice and I only work with men in my practice. I only work with men in recovery, ex-military. I was in the Navy. So I work with ex-military, first responders, police. I work with felons, ex-felons, people that are on probation and parole. I don't work with sex offenders anymore, but because that's why they call it private practice. You can pick and choose who you want to work with. So that's my niche. And one of the wonderful things about that niche is I'm always getting clients. I'm always getting referrals. I am insurance based, but I also do cash as well. So my other stream of income, my other part of my practice is what we call a Department of Transportation, SAP and SAP.
Oh yeah, right.
So that's very niche. So SAPs are, if you work for those listeners who don't know what that is, a SAP is a specialist that, say a CDL driver or a pilot or an air traffic controller or an oil and gas worker, somebody tests positive for drugs while on the job, they are immediately grounded and they can't work. And so they have to go see a SAP, somebody who is certified by the Department of Transportation to work with that person and get them through the process. Now, the great thing about being a SAP is insurance doesn't pay for this.
Right. It's private pay. I did something similar. I wasn't certified SAP, but I got in with whoever monitors train conductors and people that work on Amtrak and all of that stuff. I got in with them at one point in my private practice. I was getting like 1 million referrals, which is scary, but kind of good too that they're on top of it. But so this is super niche, and really it could be lucrative in a way, because like you said, insurance doesn't cover it. It's private pay. They've got to come. It's mandated, but also you can be super helpful too, because you're a specialist with it. So I love that. I love that you're doing that.
Yeah. And to give the listeners an idea of the pay, because I know you're very transparent with this, and I love that about your podcast, is that the pay for a SAP evaluation starts around $400 and goes up to about $800. And that's usually just 2 sessions. It's the initial and then followed by the recommendation and then the follow-up. And you're getting paid $800. For an literally 2 hours of work, and it can be lucrative, but the other piece of that is you have to market yourself. You just can't do the training and then sit back and expect Amtrak to give you a call. You actually have to do a lot of boots on the ground marketing and get to know people. So fortunately in Connecticut, we're a small state. It's taken me a couple of years to build that kind of cachet up with a lot of people around here. So that to me, I love, because I'll give you an example. So we were in Mexico for the first time a couple of years ago, Playa del Carmen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna shift gears if that's okay. Can I shift gears?
Yeah, because I want to talk about the traveling too. Because
Okay,
I could talk
yeah.
about the CSAC or the certified substance abuse stuff forever. So yeah, we
So
probably should switch.
so I graduate, I get licensed.
Yeah.
I'm happy, thinking that I'm going to retire and open up my
Mhm.
own private practice.
Yeah.
And I'm going to sit back. I leased an office, by the way. I live in Connecticut, so we live in West Hartford.
Okay.
So I leased a little office space there, thinking that, all right, the clients are going to come and it's going to be wonderful. And then I could just coast for the rest of my life into retirement. And then COVID hit, everything is shut down. I had to close that practice. And then I'm scrambling, like, what the hell am I going to do? How am I going to? Oh, we have the internet. Let me give that a shot.
Yeah.
So I moved online and everything worked out. Everything started to work out. I had to navigate, of course, getting a decent laptop, webcam, making sure that I understood what the regulations are in Connecticut to see people online with my license. That wasn't an issue. But then now I had all this time to do, and COVID started to end, and my wife and I are looking around like, we want to travel. We want to take our children and expose them to the world. And she speaks Spanish very fluently. So
awesome.
We decided for our first test, let's go down to Mexico for the summer, spend about 5 weeks there, and bring the kids and see what that's going to be like. So we picked a spot on the map, Playa del Carmen. We had been down there once before, the Cancun area, and realized that it's all built up. It's a beautiful place.
Yeah, I love it down there. Yeah.
Nice people, but once again, the internet wasn't a thing for me. Made a few mistakes on that trip. They weren't terrible, but what happened was, the first mistake is I went on Airbnb and I looked for the coolest, most extravagant Airbnb in Playa del Carmen. And it was a 3-bedroom, beautiful pictures. It had its own private little pool up on the roof. And we had it had other pools in the complex, spitting distance of the water, walking distance of what they call Fifth Avenue in Playa del Carmen. That's the spot where all the shops and the nightlife is. And how cool is that?
Yeah, it's very cool.
So it had good reviews, but here's the mistake I made. I didn't read the reviews too much in terms of the internet. So we show up, check in. Turns out, the place is beautiful. It's great. Older. It's a much older condo.
Yeah.
But made it entirely out of solid concrete.
Oh my gosh.
And the internet wasn't good internet. It literally was internet where I went into another room and I had zero connectivity.
Yeah.
And what happened was I moved everything online. I had a Psychology Today profile, a company called Alma, which has actually been pretty decent with me. And then my SAP, I'm on a SAP list. So clients were starting to call into me. And I got my funny thing, got a SAP client that called me up and he said, I need to see you. And I'm like, great, be happy to. I'm looking at the money I'm getting.
Yeah.
That same day, I got another call from another SAP client. And that's when I started to realize these calls, this trip with those clients and my practice clients, it's going to pay for this trip.
Yeah, exactly.
For the trip down here. But I didn't have a decent internet connection. So I'm emailing the owner and I'm like, listen, can we fix this thing? What can we do? And they were like, no, the internet's the internet. And I was looking at my wife and what am I going to do? I need to find something. And so I started looking at co-working spaces in Playa del Carmen. That was the hike to get there in terms of walking or taking a cab. I didn't want to do that. And plus it wasn't private. I needed some privacy.
Al is a comprehensive HIPAA compliance solution that helps you manage your practice, meet with your clients virtually through video therapy, manage client appointments and client records seamlessly, streamline your claims process, and communicate with clients securely through Al's client portal. Visit alpractice.com/Kim Tolson for an offer of 50% off your first 6 months.
Here I am holding my laptop in the air, walking around the condo, trying to find a Wi-Fi spot.
I feel your pain.
Long story short, I found a spot in one of the bedrooms that was on the floor.
Yeah.
So I'm on the floor, seeing the clients, janky Zoom, but it worked.
Yeah.
I was able to do that for 5 weeks, but that was a mistake, Kim, I will never, ever make again. I don't care
I swear, I hear you. Go ahead.
I don't care how beautiful it is. I
Yeah.
don't care, how baller, how incredible the pool is and the building is, if there's not a good internet connection. And what's funny, the review said that. I missed it. I just didn't look at it. I was just
Yeah.
too enamored with the private pool and the gazebo up on the roof that we could sit at and cook and
I get
drink.
it.
And
I've done the same thing. It's, oh my gosh, okay, we need a place in 3 weeks. We want to go here. This place looks perfect. Then you forget to look for even the most basic. Does it have a washer and dryer?
mhm.
It's like, how do we book a place without a washer and dryer? Or it's all these little things. We even have a checklist now and we still forget because we get totally enamored. Like you said, oh my God, it's right on the ocean. Like we're on one right now. And we didn't look at the beach. We didn't even think to, but the ocean is rocky. Like when you go to the water, it's rocky in Florida. I'm like, I didn't even know they had rocky beaches in Florida. It's terrible. But we didn't do our research because we were like, this is perfect. It's right on the ocean. This is a gorgeous place. But anyway, all that to say, I feel your pain.
Yeah, it was rough. It was rough. And
Yeah.
the beaches were okay. Just for those who have not been to that area of Mexico, there's a lot of seaweed on the beach.
Yes. Sargassum.
Yeah.
There's like a whole thing. You can follow the blooms across the world that are coming towards Playa del Carmen. Yeah, it's terrible.
Yeah, it's a thing. And fortunately, the city does do a decent job of cleaning it up. But
Yeah.
you're out there in the water and you're going to get some seaweed on you, and it comes up on the beach. And if it's sitting there too long, it starts to smell. Listen, these are first world problems. I'm not complaining about it. The place was, like I said, the place was amazing. The people were wonderful. We had such a wonderful experience exposing our children to a different, living embedded in a different country, coming right out of COVID. And that was, which is why the following year, we were looking at where are we going to go? And we were looking at Costa Rica. We were looking at places in South America. By the way, I think next year we're looking at going to Colombia. There's some
cool.
good places, because she speaks Spanish and I'm taking advantage.
Yeah. Why not?
And then when the kids are a little bit older, then we're looking at Europe. I'd like to go to Morocco, but once again, that's just a fantasy of mine.
Why not?
But it is on my checklist. And maybe I love to go to the Far East, going to Thailand, which I hear is amazing. And I look at a lot of the influencers that are living out there, something that we can do. And having done that, I think is also providing the kind of growth that we want to expose our daughters to as well. And it gives me a deeper appreciation of living in a different country, not being just a tourist anymore. Because we, like you do, many of your guests do. I had the first year we were there, by the way, my wife went out to hop in a cab to go to the Walmart because it was a little too far, but that's where all the food was and everything. I did not know that literally in 5 blocks away was Playa del Carmen's equivalent of Whole Foods. It was a beautiful.
Oh, really?
Did not know that it's right there. You walk right in and it's beautiful, clean, and liquor and beer and meats and cheeses and all this great food, fresh fruit every day. It was this incredible. I found that out the following year because we went back to Playa del Carmen.
It's like, how did I miss this? I do that too. I'll leave somewhere and I'm like, wait, there was a grocery store like right there. I didn't even know.
Oh my God. It was just, I was kicking myself. But we learn, right? We learn from these mistakes.
Exactly.
So the second year, we went back to Playa del Carmen. This time we got another nice Airbnb. This one's a bit different. And of course, the Wi-Fi was amazing. It was just perfect for me. Made sure it was going to be, it was fiber optic. It was chef's kiss.
Awesome.
The building itself, brand new. The rooftop, it had 5 rooftop pools. It had a bar up there. A lot of expats were living there, as well as people traveling all through. And it was just a really good experience for us as well. No complaints there in terms of running my practice remotely. Were there any complaints about Playa? I think we were just getting probably a little burned out in terms of, once again, 4 to 5 weeks. And because when we have children and we're embedded in another country, for those that are going to Playa or that area, there are not a lot of playgrounds. There's not a lot of outdoor things for children to do. So you don't see a lot of children walking around on the streets during the afternoon because it's 105 degrees.
Yeah.
It's hot. You get used to it. We really couldn't have that experience of being around other parents. Which is why we're looking at South America now. And we're looking at cities that are family friendly, a lot of outdoor activities for children, This year, we're heading up to Montreal for a couple of weeks, and we're staying in Old Montreal. It's a 4-hour drive for us, so that's going to be a fun road trip. And
oh my gosh,
and I've let my clients know I'm excited about being on the road, excited about seeing clients again remotely, and having that experience and navigating what it's to work remotely. And I think next year and the year after, we're going to maybe increase the time that we're on the road as well. Awesome. But yeah, it's just a wonderful, I think, lifestyle for us that I didn't know was possible, to the extent that there are other therapists out there doing what they're doing and thriving. But
it's amazing.
There's a lot of minefields too.
Yeah. I'm wondering, as you're talking, like the LADC, is that your license? Does it follow the same regulations as like an LPC would have to follow, or an LCSW, or does it have its own like board and regulations and all that?
We have our own board, but it does follow the same requirements as social workers and LPCs.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay, that's cool. So I'm assuming, probably you've already checked this out, but I'm assuming it's fine to go work in Montreal, see your clients back in Connecticut. And same with Playa del Carmen. I don't think I've ever heard in Mexico a license that you couldn't work from there. But yeah, so I'm guessing it's the same.
Long as my clients are in Connecticut, I can be anywhere in the world and I can see them remotely. As a SAP, that's more of a national certification. So when you're a SAP, you're not a therapist. You are evaluating and assessing them. So that I can see, I pick up clients all over the country.
Oh, that's awesome. So you're not bound by a state licensure with that. I didn't know that.
No.
Interesting. That's really interesting. And I guess being a SAP, you're allowed to be located anywhere too, obviously, if it's national. And is it fine to be out of the country and all that?
It is fine to be out of the country. But once again, here's the problem. And I don't like taking clients outside the state. Matter of fact, I won't. And I'll tell you why.
Okay. Yeah.
Because if I have a client that's outside the state and they need treatment, which a lot of them do, I don't know the resources in Texas. I don't know the resources in Louisiana. It's not fair for me to take their money to sit down and do an assessment and say, okay, you're going to need treatment. You're going to need 3 months of IOP or 3 months of seeing a therapist that specializes in substance use disorders. What am I supposed to do? Hop on Psychology Today and start making phone calls for them or tell them? That's unethical. Oh, you need to find somebody. No. Here in Connecticut, I know all the resources. I got all the contacts. I know exactly where my clients can get into quickly if they need that. That's the service that we provide. There are some unethical SAPs out there that are just hungry for the money and they'll take anybody. And I believe that. I'm very vocal about that, but that's another podcast we can share.
I really like that. A lot of us, we're all pushing for like interstate compacts and all that stuff. But that is one positive thing about licensing restrictions, I think, is that you do get familiar with the resources. You do know how to get your client help if you're online, like in a telehealth session versus somebody maybe sitting in Morocco that you're seeing or something. It's like that does get out of our scope a little bit. And we talk about this on the podcast, but also in the Traveling Therapist Facebook group. Know how to get a hold of 911 if you're seeing a client in a different country or a different place than you're familiar with. So I'm so glad to hear you say that you really could take anybody from anywhere, especially being a SAP. It's so specialized and people need it. Need that service so much, employers and all of that. But being able to say, you know what, I'm not going to compromise my values. I want to stay in this place where I know I can give you really good, reliable resources. I think that's super commendable. Really.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And for those that are thinking about going into that specialty, please understand that you're working with people that have substance use issues, that it's not just counseling. It's not just talking to them for 60 minutes a week. There's a lot of other moving parts here. There's relapse, there's slips, there's a lot of co-occurring, most have co-occurring disorders as well, trauma, PTSD, depression, anxiety, all that stuff that goes along with somebody using heroin, cocaine, whatever. Alcohol, and they're going to need resources. They're going to need something and they look to you as the therapist to facilitate that. And for you just to say, I'm just a therapist, you need to find your own. That's unethical. That to me is, it's not borderline. It's just completely unethical. And I would never, ever do that and leave a client like that hanging. Yeah. There's a lot writing on this specialty of being a addiction specialist in the field. Just like I would never, children, I could not work with that population.
Yeah. Oh my God, I know. I had to get out of that early. I tried in the beginning, but it's pressure because I don't know what you were getting ready to say. I totally interrupted, but sometimes it was the parents that were the problem. And then you're supposed to get the kid and fix him. At least that was my experience. And it was like so hard for me because it was like, the kid's great. It's you. That's the problem. So I had a really hard time with that. Like it felt, I just didn't like that at all. So I got out of that like niche completely, but yeah. And what were you going to say?
No, that was it.
Yeah.
Children, I think people, suicidal ideation. That's another people that
Oh, yeah.
like deep depression, not melancholy, not feeling nostalgic, not what am I going to do with my life? Some existential, it's people that have like deep, like they're going to kill themselves. That's another population that I am far outside the scope of my practice with, because I'm just not, I'm not trained in that. I'm not going to go down that road. And it's just, I've had colleagues that are very good with them, but I've also seen the consequences that when you're going to do when your client commits suicide, right?
Yeah.
I know what I do when my client overdoses. There's a protocol for that for me. And many of my clients have overdosed because here in the Northeast, the opiate epidemic is horrific. Fentanyl, carfentanil, heroin, opiates, all of that is rampant here. In Connecticut, I think we have 2,000 overdoses, deaths a year. And those are the ones we just know about. And it's right. So when you come into this particular niche that I'm in, just much like yours, you're going to have to accept some of the bad with the good. And like I said, I'm not complaining about, I love it. This is what I think I'm good at, because I see a lot of my clients stay with me and get better. Yeah. But at the same time, I love the freedom of having a practice that's completely remote. By the way, I don't have an office anymore. I completely work at home now. I'm on the road. I don't think twice anymore about having to call up a client or clients and say, hey, I'm on vacation for 2 weeks. No, I'm always on vacation.
Me too. It's wild, but my boyfriend and I say that all the time. We actually live on vacation. It's incredible.
Yeah. By the way, it's in my bio, but you can put that in your show notes. I'm also a full-time college professor. So when I retired.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So when I retired, I did not think I was going to get it. But here in Connecticut, we have a big wave of retirements because people, that 20-year, 25-year mark with a lot of public employees, they left. And one of the community colleges, the professor for the drug and alcohol recovery counselor program, she retired and actually moved to Costa Rica, of all places. Nice. And so they announced her position. And just for shits and grins, I applied. And they hired me. And to this day, I've been there for now 3 years. To this day, I expect somebody to tap me on the shoulder and say, we made a mistake, come with us. But it's amazing because now I'm able to train the next generation of addiction counselors in our state, as well as have that freedom that every summer we can leave for 3 or 4 months if we want. We've got a lot of around my classes and around the program that I'm teaching, we can just travel anywhere we want, which is it's a win for me. So
it's amazing. And you're probably exuding that sort of mentality, culture, attitude around private practices and diversifying income streams, and also having the freedom to have the lifestyle that you want. I'm assuming you exude that to your students. So you're helping the next generation with that too, I would think. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Kim, for saying that's exactly what I do. I believe, to me, some of the best podcasters out there, some of the best influencers out there that are in this space are the ones that are completely vulnerable and honest about how much they're making, about how much you can make. They get rid of the shame and the stigma surrounding this field, and working in this field. Granted, it's an associate's level degree program, but most of our students decide that they're going to move on to graduate school.
Sure. And that's like what the basis of everything.
Yeah. And that's what I let them know. I said, listen, you certainly can work in the field as a CAC here in Connecticut on the associate's degree level. You certainly can have a decent living at it. Nothing wrong with that. You want to make more money, you need to get your master's, at least your master's degree, and you need to specialize and niche down. And I'm vulnerable with my students. I tell them what I charge an hour, how much I make, not because I'm bragging, but because
it's true.
You can make good money in this field, right? Much like doctors and lawyers. You drive by a lawyer's house and you see the BMW parked in the driveway. They're doing pretty well.
Yeah, exactly.
So exactly. I appreciate that.
I love that so much. That's so good to start getting rid of the stigma that we were talking about in the beginning of the episode. And also the stigma around, as social workers or substance abuse professionals, we have to take these really hard cases and we've got to do this awful in the trenches work forever. Like I specialize in like trauma and like substance abuse. It's called substance use disorders now, but I called it substance abuse when I was coming up. And I specialized in that. I did EMDR. So I had the toughest cases. I had people that were relapsing, but they also had tons of trauma. And I did that for so long in my private practice. And then when I decided to go fully remote and take it on the road, I was like, I don't want to work with these hard clients anymore. It's too much. Like you were saying with the probationees that you were working with and all that, it's eventually you get tired of it. And I think there's even shame around that in our field. Like you got to work with like tough cases. If you don't want to, if you want to take the easier cases, the ones that you never have to worry about suicide, the ones that just have, I don't know, like middle class problems or whatever. If you want to take those clients, that's also like shameful, and to charge a lot of money for it and all of that. So also that's part of what I hope we're doing here too, is breaking that stigma a little bit. It's okay to be a traveling therapist and see really easier clients.
Yeah. And you said something very important about the kind of money that you can make. It does differ. I agree in terms of your specialty, but as we have our foot on the gas pedal, we can make as little or as much as we want in private practice.
Exactly.
There's nothing wrong with working 40 or 50 hours a week. As a therapist, you're going to burn out very quickly on that. There are other ways, like you so eloquently talk about, to have a diversified stream of income coming in.
Yeah.
And you can build your own build a group practice. You can have podcasts and advertisings and books and classes and groups and all these wonderful things that you're providing of value to people that are they don't have to figure it out on their own, do they? They don't have to reinvent the wheel. That you can go to somebody like you and ask them, hey, listen, what's the quickest way for me to get on the road, to work where I need to live and have the lifestyle that I want? Because they're out there on Google and they're getting a lot of misinformation. They're on some pretty toxic websites that people are going to put negative information in their head and say, oh, you can't do that. You shouldn't do that. Oh, what kind of liability are you going to have living in Spain? You know what they're going to do to you when they find out your license?
Exactly.
Nothing's going to happen. Yeah. You know what's going to happen? I'm going to feel better. I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to drink more on the weekends and party, and I'm going to develop a new language, and I'm going to expose my family to a different culture, and maybe I'll become an expat and live completely 100% in another country. Do that.
Yeah.
Hundreds of your people have done successfully, or thousands.
Exactly. I love it. I think that's a good note to end on. I just love talking to you. So people want to ever reach out to you or learn more about what you do or how you've made it work, how could they find you?
So I have a website. I'm also on LinkedIn, and we can put that in the show notes as well. But if you just type in my name, Paul Collette, Colete, type in Paul Collette, I should show up in Google ranking in the SEO search for the first page, but type in Paul Collette, Connecticut, and you'll see me on LinkedIn. You can always connect with me on there. I also have a website called SAP Services CT. It's one word, and that is my private practice SAP business piece. Any questions or anything, feel free to email me through there as well. I'm on Instagram, but that's a closed account just for my friends and family. Like I said, LinkedIn is really where I spend a lot of my professional time. Hit me up on LinkedIn, DM me through there. I'll be happy to provide any value, or just friend me, and I'll be happy to follow your journey as well.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Thanks for being here.
Kim.
Thank you so much for listening to the Traveling Therapist podcast. For show notes, links, and downloads, head over to thetravelingtherapist.com, where you'll be able to learn more about my journey, the courses I've created for you, and other exciting resources to make your dreams become a reality. If you've enjoyed this episode, please share with your traveling therapist friends, subscribe to the podcast, and if you love this episode, please leave a review.